Hey guys, I am down on the allotment today and I am going to be direct sowing some cosmos seeds, even though it's only just March. Still early. This is why. For anyone that doesn't know, my name is Peggy and I am growing a cut flower garden here on my allotment in Kanagawa Prefecture, Japan, which is just south of Tokyo in USDA Zone 9B. Thanks for checking out my channel. Okay, we are in March, but I am going to start planting out my cosmos seeds. Now, for most people, and if you read the back of the packet, you are generally told that you should be planting your cosmos seeds indoors around March and April and then moving them outdoors once your frost has passed, and usually kind of around the end of May is the best time to be planting these. But I'm in zone 9B and I have found from the past that when I stick to these packet instructions, by the time I'm just getting some flowers in the ground, a lot of the gardens around me have cosmos coming up and flowering already. We are really mild here. We have had snow the last few days. We've also had a lot of rain, and just now when I touch the soil is really warm. It's really nice. I've got my first flowers coming up. I've got some anemone coming up. I have some of my daffodils I've just picked. My hyacinth are starting to come up. So we are actually past what could be seen as a hard frost. But also, I am always behind with these guys, always behind with them. So I've decided to get them in early. I don't know what is shining brighter today, the sunshine or my forehead. I have grown cosmos in my allotment for the past 3 years and I have tried a few different varieties. I'm not a huge fan of cosmos though, for a few reasons. It is a beautiful flower, and when you see it in gardens and it's tall and it's kind of wisping about in the wind, it looks really, really nice. But as a cut flower, it is just a small accent. It is kind of that airy element that you add at the end to make it look a bit more whimsical, a bit more loose. And it doesn't have a great vase life, so quite often you're having to cut the cosmos back as it opens. Now, other ones will open up in the vase to a certain extent, but they're great if you're doing stuff like wedding work where you only need it to look good for a day. If you're having it as an arrangement at home, it is something that you have to kind of pull out after a while because the other flowers last a lot longer. But it's still something I like to have. The problem that I've had with it are twofold. One, the type that I was growing. I tend to like the rufflier flowers, the kind of more detailed flowers. Because my garden is so small, I want to get the most impressive flowers that I can out of that space. So I started growing the double click varieties. So most cosmos just look kind of like this. It's a bit of a daisy flower. But the double click varieties have lots of petals and look much rufflier. The problem I've had is that they're also much smaller, and because they have so many petals on them, they're really, really heavy. So when they were growing on the tiny little wispy stems, which is what cosmos are known for, the heads were actually too heavy for the stems and they were drooping over. And when you're trying to have that kind of airy element in an arrangement, when they're just drooping over, it's not great. My other problem is that they do not like the summer here. Now, cosmos, if you read up on them, you'll be told these are a drought-tolerant flower, and they are. They can, once they're established, if you get them started early in spring, and by the time the summer hits and they're a well-established plant, they can handle drought. They don't need a lot of water. They don't need a lot of care. But there's a difference between something being drought tolerant and something being able to survive 40-degree heat, which is what we get regularly here just south of Tokyo. So I was finding that because the leaves and the stems are thin and they are delicate, they just dried out and crisped up so badly. So I have to try and get these in really early so that I can get them in the early summer, because the midsummer sun just absolutely destroys them. They don't like it, they crisp up. Now, before I did have water issues on my old allotment, and I'm now in this new allotment which does have access to a well over there. So I'm hoping that I will be able to keep the garden a lot wetter, through the summer. Also, this is much nicer soil. I was closer to the beach. I live in a beach town. I was closer to the beach last time. This is much further back, and so it has a nicer soil. The soil in my last allotment was very sandy. So I'm hoping that it will actually retain the water a lot better. I've also been adding organic matter to it to try and help with that a little bit as well. So I'm hoping that just generally this garden will be nicer and I might be able to get my cosmos to last longer, but I'm not banking on it. So what I am going for is planting early and trying to get as much as I can before the summer heat comes in. But I'm not going to be planting all of my seed, because I've also noticed they like to grow cosmos around here in like the roadside displays and in the parks and stuff, and it looks beautiful around October, September, October time. So cosmos seed take between 8 and 12 weeks to get from seed to bloom. So I'm going to do one planting now and then one planting maybe around the end of July. Now August is our hottest month, so that's a bit of a risk. I might try again at the end of August, which means I won't be getting these to bloom really until kind of end of October, November time, but that's okay. It's still warm here at that time, no problem. So that's my plan. Go for an early spring planting, call it quits in the summer, and then try again and try and get an autumn flush to come from them as well. That is the plan. So these are the varieties that I am growing, and you can see there are no doubles in here. I'm not going for the double clicks this time. I've gone for really simple ones. I just want to see if I can get them going in the garden this time. I might look for ones I prefer a bit more next time, but I mean, these are still nice colors. So I got the plain open daisy type one in this nice dark purple because it'll match a lot of the other colors that I have in the garden. I then went for this mix, which is quite nice. I mean, I don't really particularly like the variated color thing. I've been digging in the soil, I'm dirty already. Yeah, I'm not really into the big kind of variation of color. That's not my bag, but I mean, it looks pretty, so we'll try that one. And the last one is one that I have grown before, and it is the cupcake, and I loved this one. The problem was I didn't get very many flowers from it. The first flowers that came up were massive. They were like this big, and they held up really well in the vase actually. They were really, really lovely, and I loved them, but the plant just dried up and died too quickly for me to get a reasonable amount of flowers off them. So I'm really hoping that I'll get nice ones on this year before the heat kicks in. So this is what I am going for. Okay, so cosmos do grow quite tall, so I am putting them in this row, which is where I planted out my snapdragon last week, and again they'll get to about 100-120 centimeters as well. I then have my poppy in front of them, but honestly my poppy haven't done very well this year. I'm really upset about that, and I'm going to have to think about what went wrong there and try and fix it for next year, because I love having the poppy in my garden. But they haven't come up very well, but if they did, they too would be tall. So this is kind of my tall things lane. I've also got my nigella and some cornflower at the end, so this is all stuff that's not going to shade each other out. It's all going to come up about the same time and be about the same height, is my thinking behind that. Now I don't have very much space in this row. I would like to have a bit more, so if my poppy don't do anything over the next month, that means I can put my later planting in this part of the ground, because I don't really have. I was going to plant some amaranth, but I can put that in where the nigella is going to go. So I could extend this out over the season. So that's my plan, is where my snapdragon ended, I'm going to be putting cosmos in, but I'm only going to put in one row of each so that I then can do that succession planting and have room. Another name for cosmos is the Mexican aster. That is because it is originally from South and Central America, and it is a member of the aster family, which is why it kind of has that daisy appearance. Because it is from that area of the world, it can be drought tolerant. It doesn't mind heat, but it does need to be in full sun. I've put mine right in the middle of the garden, hoping that it will get the most sunlight. It does get too hot here, so that is a double-edged sword, but if you do not give it enough sun, if it's not in full sun, then it will not flower. It will put up lots of foliage, it will look nice and healthy and green, but you won't actually get very much flower from it. So you need to make sure you put it in the right spot in the garden to get the best display. Okay, so usually when you're planting seeds, they say make your line, sprinkle the seeds along, wait for them to germinate, and then go along and thin out. I don't do that because it's a waste of seed. Like, why am I going to plant stuff where I'm eventually just going to pull it out anyway? So I don't do that. I am just going to do, let me show you. I'm going to put 3 plants in a row, because if these get going, they do get big and bushy, so that's fine. So I'm literally just going to do 1, 2, 3. And I will put seeds there, there, and there. But I will put multiple seeds in, because in the past my cosmos have had problems. Not just in germinating, quite often they come up but then they very quickly die back, or they get eaten. Slugs and snails love these guys. So I tend to put in more seeds than I need. But I also have found that a lot of the time they do germinate, start to come up, and then suddenly die back. I have a lot of dieback with my cosmos for unknown reasons. So I always make sure that I don't use up all my seed, and I've got enough to come back and replant where the ones are dying off, so that I kind of keep on top of it and make sure that the garden is always full with the cosmos. The second thing is, when I'm planting everything else, you'll have noticed that I'm feed them. Put in fertilizer in the hole, put fertilizer on the soil, add nice compost to it, and then water with either a compost tea or some kind of flower food. I'm not doing that. Cosmos don't like that. In fact, it's really bad for your cosmos. And if you have cosmos in your garden and you're finding that you're getting lots of great growth on them, lots of leaves but no flowers, it's because you're overfeeding them or the soil is too nitrogen rich. These guys actually like a poor soil. They're not picky at all. So I am not doing anything to my soil. It already has quite a lot of organic matter in it, so I'm a bit worried that it might be too good for them anyway. But I'm not going to add anything to these at all. I'm just going to put the seeds in, cover them up and leave them alone. Like I say, it's been raining here. This is wet soil, so I'm not even going to water them in. I'll give them a wee go over to try and get the seeds started. But I'm just going to leave them be. We are due rain tomorrow as well, so that'll do them. These should be really easy to grow. And the last thing is, although I've just shown you that I have dug out a wee hole here, that's way too deep. They don't need to be in that deep at all. Literally about 1/4 of an inch. So, I mean, you're just barely covering them with soil. Cosmos can become a kind of weed. They do self-seed very easily. If you are not cutting off the flower heads and you're letting them go to seed, they will self-seed around your garden and just pop up absolutely everywhere because they need very little to grow. Like I say, they do well in poor soil and they do not need to be deep in the soil to get them going. So I'm literally just going to rough up the soil a bit, sprinkle some seeds in and cover it over, and that is us. These are what the seeds look like. They're kind of long and skinny, but they are big enough to handle. They're not like poppy seed that are just going to blow away. So they are really easy to handle. And handily, on the back of the packet, it shows you what the seedling looks like, so you know what to look out for and you don't pull it out thinking it is a weed. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks I will be getting these popping out the ground. Hopefully. I'm putting 3 seeds in each hole. We say 1 for the earth, 1 for the crow, 1 to grow. Seems fair to me. And that's all it is. They're in, they're done. I'm going to leave them alone, and hopefully in 8 weeks or 12 weeks I will have some really nice cosmos coming. Now, I have started these at home before and transplanted them in, and that's good because, you know, you can see that they're big enough and they don't get eaten by snails and things. But I do actually lose a lot of them, so this is one of the ones that if I'm starting it at home, I make sure I plant a lot more than I'm planning on putting in the garden, because I do constantly, there's always one, like in a row everything will be well, and then just one at the end tends to do really badly and I have to keep replacing it and keep replacing it and keep replacing it. But I've decided to try and direct seed as much as I can this year, because I just feel like in this climate I don't really need to be starting at home. It just seems like an extra step that's unnecessary. So if these guys come up well, then I'll keep doing it this way, but if they don't, then I'll just go back to starting them at home instead. Once your seeds start to germinate and they have got a little bit of height on them, these are ones that you want to pinch out. That literally means just cutting off the main stem, and that causes them to become bushier and give you a lot more flowers in the long run. When the flowers then come, you want to be deadheading them regularly. These are a cut and come again flowers, so the more you deadhead them, the more flowers you're going to get. If you don't cut the flowers off, then it will go to seed and they'll stop producing flowers altogether. But if you keep deadheading them and you're not in as hot a place as me, these can go all through the summer and give you a beautiful display all year. I tend to cut most of my flowers because I am using them for cut flowers. That's the point of the garden. But these are ones that are very easy to let go to seed at the end of the season and then collect the seed to use for next season. It's a really easy one. They kind of make spiky brown seed pods that you can use. Very easy to kind of shake them out and collect the seed up. If you don't do that, then they will spread all over your garden quite happily. And if you want a wild meadow looking garden, that's great. If you don't, then you want to be cutting those seed heads before they get big and fat and dry out, or you'll end up with them everywhere. I might actually leave some to go to seed this year if I can get them to survive that long, just so that I don't have to keep buying seed every year. That'd be great. Yeah. But that's all from me. If you want to follow along and see how these do, then remember to hit the subscribe button below. If you want to see what I do with all of my cut flowers, then you can check out everything from last year, which is over on my Instagram page, which is From the Witch's Garden, and there's a link to that below as well. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.